balancing our doshas. One of the first things that we would need to be in tune with, of course, is if we're balanced or unbalanced, and also what is our predominant constitution. So doshas are elements of air, ether, water, fire, and earth, and they're organized in different categories. And if you haven't yet figured out what your dosha is, there's a bunch of links from last week that will give you places to go online for simple tests to figure that out. We have pitta, which is fiery, vata, which is predominantly airy, kapha, which is earthy. And even though each of those have a tendency or a way that they work, we all have part of all of them. So the Naughty Showam, we'll start with that one. So it balances all of the doshas. It helps to distribute the prana, the energy, and the oxygen throughout our body. Sorry, my dog is just going crazy there. I'm not sure what's going on. So when we have a lot of vata, that kind of moving energy, then this is particularly helpful for restful sleep, mental clarity and calmness. It helps to soothe the nervous system. And it helps to feel more grounded, steadier, less anxiety, less overwhelm. If you have a lot of pitta, or if your pitta, the fire element, is out of balance, this practice calms the mind, increases mental harmony, which is another way of saying it soothes the irritation, the aggression, the irritability. It soothes overheated emotions and releases tension in the body and the mind. So each one of these, even though we're all doing the same practice, it has a little bit of a different effect. And then with kapha, the earth and water element, we get more mental clarity. If you think about kapha being kind of dull and lethargic when we're out of balance, it improves our mental clarity, focus, and alertness. And it also helps to relieve respiratory allergies, congestion, asthma. Let's do this practice. We'll just do a short practice of it. As you're doing that, notice what you feel in your body. Do you feel balanced? Do you feel a little bit out of sorts? Do you feel agitated? Let's do just one round of this. And this is a practice that I highly recommend people do on an ongoing basis for a while. Use the ring finger and the thumb to block off one nostril and the other. We sit up straight so we have room for the diaphragm to breathe. And notice as you're breathing in, what is your active nostril? So block one off if you want. Breathe in through the other. Sometimes they're kind of even. Oftentimes there's quite a difference. So we're going to start by breathing through the active nostril. Bring your attention to the eyebrow center behind the forehead. And then let your awareness flow from the eyebrow center to the base of the nose and then back. Just going up and down in the active nostril for now. So exhale and inhale in the active nostril. Let your breath be steady. Follow the flow of the breath with your mind. Next exhale, change to the passive nostril. Let your awareness flow from the eyebrow center to the base of the nose and back. And next exhalation, change back to the active nostril. And notice what it's doing in your system. If you have a lot of that restless energy, is it settling things down? If you're feeling kind of fiery, is it cooling it off or soothing that overheated emotion? Next, exhale through your passive nostril. Exhale and inhale through your passive nostril. Really sharpen your attention. Notice the flow, notice the sensations of air. And then back to the active nostril, exhale and inhale. And so we're doing just the exhale and inhale through the active nostril for now. And next exhale, change to the passive nostril and exhale and inhale through the passive nostril. And if you had any of that sluggishness, notice if your mind has sharpened at all with this focus. And then bring your hand down and follow that flow now in both nostrils. And even though that was just a 3 or 4 minute practice, notice if there's any changes. What did you observe? I have several recorded practices of alternate nostril breathing. There's different patterns that we use, single breath, complete breath, or what we did here, just breathing through one side and then changing over to the other after several breaths. So if you're interested in doing a practice of this, it's a really helpful practice to do for a few weeks if you can. Try to do it once a day or twice a day. You can do the shorter version like this. You can do a 10 or 15-minute version and see the effect that it has. This is a powerful master practice that's helpful for everybody. And then from there, we can go into the specific pranayama practices. Bumblebee, Bromery, is for balancing vata. When you're using it to balance vata, the sound is only on the exhale. And it's kind of a lower sound. So it reduces high blood pressure, helps with sleep, enhances parasympathetic tone. So it kind of brings you that more grounded sense, nourishes the throat and voice, calms and quiets the thinking mind. Good for concentration, for mental tension. If you have headaches or migraines, and also controls the bladder, which is interesting how we're working up in the head and yet it's working with the whole of our mind body. The sound, if you were to just make kind of a humming sound on the exhale, just with your regular kind of voice, so breathe in through the nose and out through the nose as well, but hum. You can make it a little bit higher if you want. See if you can relax your throat as you're doing it. And then as you're doing it, start to refine it a little bit by bringing towards the back of your tongue, bring that up a little bit to your roof of your mouth. And notice it will make it a little bit more in your nasal passages, not too firmly to the roof of the mouth or you'll block the sound. Just experiment with that a little bit. So breathing in through the nose and then it's a little bit of an annoying sound, but it does sound a lot like a bee. So there's a lot of different ways to do this practice. All of the pranayama practices have a lot of subtleties. Michael Grady, Yoga International, is a great source for anything yoga, pranayama. They also have a lot on Ayurveda. If you were to do that for a couple of minutes, maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes, you could do it once a day or a few times a day. And keep the sound not too high. Sometimes when we practice this, it's like really high. But when you're balancing vata, keep it a little bit on the lower end and only do the sound on the exhale. Let's just do 1 or 2 more repetitions. Your tongue kind of touching the roof of your mouth, back of your tongue. When you're doing it correctly, when you have just enough pressure with the back of your tongue to the top of your mouth, and you get that kind of vibration in your nasal cavities. And that's part of what the practice is about. It helps to get everything moving through there. The next one is Citali. The reason there's 2 here is just because of our genetics. This one, Citali, is when you can curl your tongue to make like a straw. Sitkari is if you can't, but they're both the same. So what I like to do is just moisten my tongue or take a drink of water. It's the same instructions. So if you can't curl your tongue like that, don't worry about it. We moisten and curl your tongue and breathe in at a normal pace through the mouth and then exhale through the nostrils. So it relieves thirst, it reduces blood pressure. It also lowers body temperature. When you're feeling overheated, this can be a really helpful one. I suspect it acts a little bit like when a dog pants, it lets the heat out of the body. As an ongoing practice, it's really helpful in terms of inflammation in the body. So pitta, fire element, can create a lot of heat in the body, which isn't good for us. So we want a little bit of heat, but we don't want to be overheated. And the other thing that I used this for a lot for 3 or 4 years was when I was in menopause and I would be having hot flashes. I would do this practice just for a couple minutes when a hot flash would come on. And then I would do it kind of every day as a heat lowering practice as well. So let's do this all together a little bit. So inhale through that curl in your tongue. Just let your awareness be in the practice, in the moment. Notice how it feels cool coming across your tongue. Let your body relax as you're breathing out. Continue to inhale. If your tongue doesn't do that, have your mouth open just a little bit so that the air is still coming across your tongue. Notice your whole system. Then another one last one. And then let go of the practice. You can learn more about this practice again at Yoga International. There's a link to an article. It's a really interesting practice to work with. I don't do it all the time because I tend to not have a lot of pitta in my body. But when I do feel overheated, and especially like I said, when I was in menopause, I use this a lot and it really helps to cool things down. Now, if you're someone who tends to go into a fight response when you feel under threat, then this could be something you could do to help come back into a more regulated state as well, because it'll kind of release some of that heat. The focus for Kapha is to bring in that light, warming, activating energy to reduce congestion and heaviness. This particular practice is a little bit more complicated in a way, but it's also quite simple. Some of you might know this practice through yoga pranayama, where it's done very fast. I think sometimes people refer to this as the breath of fire as well. But this is helpful for increasing the digestive fires, for metabolism. We always do this practice on an empty stomach. So if your stomach is not empty right now, you could try it a little bit, but don't do like a intense practice of it. And also with Ayurveda, Kapalabhati is done slowly, only about 1 per second. So what we do is relax your body, sit upright, so shoulders over your hips. And then on the exhalation, we press in sharply with the lower belly, and then we breathe in through the nostrils. So exhale, You make kind of a snort sound and then just breathe in passively. So what we're doing is the lower part of the belly from the navel center to the pelvic floor. As you exhale, press in sharply with your lower belly and then just breathe in normally. So there are some contraindications for this, so it would be helpful to read the article. And mostly things like if you have a hernia or if you're menstruating, if you have certain conditions in your digestive system. But this is a practice that if you have a sluggish digestive system, if you have a lot of constipation or there's things that just aren't moving all that well, this can be on a regular basis, can be a really helpful practice for that. It helps to revitalize all of the energy. It helps to give a really deep massage to the bowels, the upper and the lower bowels, and it helps to really get things moving. So it reduces congestion. It also helps on a energetic level, not just physically, but energetically or emotionally. It helps to get things moving. So let's just do a couple more here. So press in sharply with your lower belly. And then breathe normally. So you might get a little bit lightheaded. You shouldn't be so much if we're doing it this slowly. But again, always work within your own capacity. This isn't one of those ones that you can do recklessly and not have it affect you. Really pay attention to doing it slowly, doing it within your capacity. If you start to feel lightheaded, just go back to a regular breath. And not to scare ourselves off either, because it's a very powerful practice. It can really help, especially if we have a lot of that sluggish heaviness in our body with the kapha. All right, so now we're going to switch over to something else. And I don't know if you're familiar with Abanga. Some of you will be, I know. It's this self massage. So sometimes people will put oil or lotion or something on their body after a shower. And this, we do it before the shower. So the idea is we use these really good oils. One of the principles is that we don't put anything on our skin that we wouldn't put into our mouth. So to use good quality like sweet almond oil or untoasted sesame oil, depending on your dosha. So if you have a lot of heat in your body, you want to use a cooling oil like almond or coconut. If you have a lot of sluggishness in your body, you might use a lighter oil. Again, sweet almond oil is suitable for all of them. On the types of oil to use, I've got a link there to Banyan Botanicals, which has videos about how to do it. It has a lot of information on what kind of oils. Most people can get the oils. I just buy sweet almond oil at my grocery store, and that's the one that I use. So the idea is putting the oil on, it kind of helps to bring the toxins up to the surface. And then when we have a shower a little bit later, it washes them away. So this is kind of a messy practice. When I was doing it regularly, I had an old house coat, an old towel, and I would, you do the oiling and it takes about 10 minutes, usually 5 to 10 minutes. And then you sit around for a while till it soaks in a bit and then you shower it off. And you need kind of a dedicated system to do it. But it's a wonderful practice. And if you do it for a while, you'll find that your skin gets softer, your hair gets softer and more luster in it. You feel better. It stimulates your whole body. And it's also a very loving practice to do, to actually massage this warm oil into our body, go through the whole of the body. We're kind of giving ourselves that self massage. And you can pay somebody to do a massage like this, an Ayurvedic massage, if you live in an area where someone is like that. But you can't replicate the feeling of just that self-care, that loving self-care, that connection that we have with our body. So I'm not going to say too much more about that because obviously we can't do that practice together. But just to really encourage you to try it at least a few times. And, it takes a little bit of, you could do it in your bathtub and then kind of just wait in there if you want. You don't have to, you don't have to kind of have a special housecoat or something for it. But if you like it, to try it, a few times a week or something like that, or as a special treat, and see what the effect is. It's very powerful. When I did the Abhyanga, I did it a couple of times a week. I would do it for, 3 or 4 months like that, and then I would kind of get off track and I wouldn't do it for a while, and then I would do it again for a while. For a while, I did it every day, but I found that was a lot of time. Even though I really enjoyed it, I just, we have lots of pressures on our time. It's a really fascinating practice to do. It feels amazing, especially as we get older, too. We have drier skin, and having this loving kind of application of an oil that's really good for us really makes a difference in a lot of different ways. Okay, so now food and nutrition as well. We're not going to take a lot of time here. And this, I think, is where we get into that. Oh my gosh, there's so many things I would need to learn. And I would say pick a couple of things that makes sense for you. So for instance, if you know that you have a lot of vata, so you're kind of spaced out, trouble concentrating, lots of anxiety, that kind of thing. And another thing is that we tend to want to eat the foods that aren't necessarily good for us. So a vata person might have a lot of salads and dry, crunchy things. Kapha, I love heavy, oily, sweet foods. And so for whatever your dosha is, try and just maybe do a couple of things that are a little bit different. With vata, you're supposed to eat warm and nourishing foods like soups and stews and cooked vegetables, but not to eat a lot of raw, cold foods. And this is the same for drinks too, to not really drink cold water, to drink warm water or room temperature water. That's the thing for everybody. So if you're pitta, oftentimes pitta like the hot, spicy food, but try to reduce your consumption of that and the acidic foods. And then do things that are cool, refreshing, and hydrating. And one of the reasons for that is because that fire in the body tends to burn off the hydration. So you want to keep hydrating yourself. Cucumber, watermelon, coconut, leafy greens, those things are soothing. I've got a resource here from Joyful Belly, and they have resources on Ayurveda and nutrition, but also a lot of recipes. One of the things is to use the spices that are also cooling. So if you're a pitta, to use the cooling spices. If you're kapha, you want to use things that are more energizing or warming, like pepper, ginger, cinnamon. And so for kapha, would eat the warm, light foods and include vegetables, legumes, grains, and to include things that are a bit enlivening, so that aren't going to kind of go, sit heavy in your stomach and be hard to digest. So pitta can digest almost everything, but then they also tend to have more irritable bowel, that kind of symptoms. Vata needs to be more grounded. Sometimes people need to eat a little bit more heavy food if you're a vata. So it's interesting just to look at the overall situation. But the one tip for everybody, and if you did nothing else other than this one thing, it would make a huge difference in your digestion, is to drink a cup of warm water 20 minutes before you eat. So it could be hot water or warm water, but it helps to kind of clear things out. It helps to get the digestive system ready. If you wanted to combine that with something, you could do 3 or 4 minutes of alternate nostril breathing or Kapalabhati before you eat. Kapalabhati helps to massage the digestive system and get things moving as well. If you have a lot of pitta, though, you might want to do like more of an alternate nostril breathing so you can cool things off. Ayurveda is all about balance. We balance ourselves through the mental aspects, which we're going to work with more next week, and through food and the Abhyanga and the pranayama.